You know the scene.
Right.
Yeah, it's in like 1,000 romantic dramas.
Oh, yeah.
We're in the third act, the music starts to swell, the camera pushes in, and one character finally drops the mask. They reveal their deepest secret.
The classic ta-da moment.
Right, the ta-da. But here's the thing, and if you've been in a long-term relationship, you know this, real life doesn't just fade to black.
The credits don't roll.
No. The next morning, the sun comes up, you still have to share a bathroom, and now this huge new thing is just sitting on the breakfast table between you.
And that's usually when the panic starts to set in. Because that cinematic reveal, that is not the end of the story. In the real world, disclosure is, it's just the starting gun.
Now, obviously, the context here is specific. It's about the dynamics of cross-dressing. This isn't just about clothes.
Not at all. It's a case study in emotional safety.
Yes. It feels like a masterclass in how any two people navigate this collision of reality.
Yeah.
You know, what happens when my private world spills into our shared living room?
Whether that's a hidden debt, a change in faith, a kink, the mechanics are really the same.
It's about how we stay us when you just change the rules of the game.
That's a great way to put it.
So our mission today is to look at the toolkit this article provides. We're going to break down the difference between a boundary and an ultimatum, which, spoiler, are not the same thing.
Not even close.
And we're going to look at this delicate dance of compromise. Because, you know, as the author points out, rules in a relationship get a bad rap. We think of them as unromantic, but sometimes they're the only thing keeping the ship afloat.
Well, rules are often the guardrails that keep the car on the road, right? Without them, you go over the edge. But, and this is key, we have to be careful because some rules are safety rails and some are cages.
So let's start right at that cliff edge. The disclosure itself. The source material uses a metaphor that I think it's pretty evocative. Pandora's box.
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, that sounds ominous to say the least.
It is. But think about why that metaphor works. Once that box is opened, you can't stuff everything back inside. You can't unknow what you now know.
Right.
The source describes this moment as a test of emotional safety. I mean, think about the vulnerability it takes to say, this is who I am. The person disclosing is terrified. They're asking, will you still want me? Is this a deal breaker?
And for the partner, when hearing this news, it's just a massive shock to the system. And the article points out something I hadn't really considered. Almost immediately, subconsciously, the couple starts forming rules. It's like a reflex. Why is that?
It's a defense mechanism. When the ground feels shaky, human beings, we reach for structure. We crave predictability. So the partner hears this, their world just tilts on its axis, and their brain instantly goes, okay, how do I contain this?
So you get things like, okay, I can handle this, but never when the kids are awake. The text calls them emotional signals.
And that's such a key insight. These aren't just logistical requests, about which closet to use. They are signals of capacity. A rule like, don't do this in the living room, really translates to, I need a safe space where my reality hasn't changed.
It's a way of saying, I love you, but here's the line where my comfort ends.
It's a balancing act. You're negotiating the space between one person's need for authenticity and the other person's need for stability.
And if you get that balance wrong, the whole thing capsizes.
Absolutely. Which is why we need to get very specific about the tools couples use. And the biggest source of conflict is it's that difference between a boundary and an ultimatum.
Okay, I'm glad we're stopping here because in just casual conversation, I feel like I use these interchangeably. I set a boundary, I gave him an ultimatum.
We all do. We treat them like they're synonyms for I put my foot down. But the author argues they are fundamentally different species.
Worlds apart.
Worlds apart. And mixing them up is dangerous. Let's look at boundaries first. The source defines a boundary as a protective measure. Think of it as an anchor.
An anchor against what?
Against being overwhelmed. A boundary is about you. It's about what you need to feel safe or respected. It's often about time or space.
Okay.
So a partner might say, I'm comfortable with you cross-dressing, but I'd prefer if we kept it to the weekends. Or, I need our bedroom to stay a neutral zone, so please use the guest room for that.
So a boundary basically says, here is the container in which I can handle this.
Correct. And crucially, a boundary is an invitation to a conversation. It says, this is what I need. Can we make that work? It acknowledges the other person's behavior, but it defines your interaction with it. It's flexible.
Okay, so now contrast that with an ultimatum. The text calls this a demand-based threat of relational loss. That sounds aggressive.
It is. It's the nuclear option. An ultimatum sounds like, if you ever dress up again, I'm leaving.
My way or the highway.
Precisely. It's either the clothes or me. It's rigid. It's binary. It's a power play. It forces the cross-dresser to make an impossible choice. Choose your authenticity or choose your attachment to me. You can't have both.
But I want to play devil's advocate for a second.
Please.
If I'm a partner and I genuinely cannot handle the cross-dressing it fundamentally breaks my attraction or my comfort, isn't an ultimatum just honesty? Isn't it just me saying this is a deal breaker?
That's a fair question. And yes, sometimes there are hard incompatibilities. If it's truly a deal breaker, then the relationship might just be over.
Right.
But the source is really focusing on couples who want to make it work. And in that context where the goal is to stay together, ultimatums are usually a trap. The text says they give you short-term clarity but lead to long-term disaster.
Okay, walk me through that. Because in the moment, if I say stop it or else, and the person stops, didn't I win? Problem solved.
You solved the behavior maybe, but you didn't solve the drive. The desire to cross-dress, it's usually part of their identity. It doesn't just evaporate because you threaten them.
So what happens?
It goes underground. The source warns that ultimatums almost always lead to the purge and binge cycle.
Purge and binge. That sounds like a dieting term.
It's very similar psychologically. The cross-dresser throws everything away, that's the purge, to prove their love. But the internal need doesn't go away. The pressure builds, and eventually the dam breaks. They buy new clothes, that's the binge, and now they have to hide them.
So you've officially just turned your partner into a sneak.
Exactly. You've traded an uncomfortable reality for a comfortable lie, and now you have a relationship built on secrecy. And trust me, the secrecy is often more damaging than the nylon or the makeup ever was. An ultimatum freezes the dialogue. A boundary says, this part of you is tricky for me, so let's manage how we interact with it.
There's another angle here that I thought was really insightful. The text talks about reciprocity. We usually think of the partner as the one setting the rules. But the article argues the cross-dresser needs boundaries too.
This is so often overlooked. The cross-dresser usually feels guilty. They feel like they're the problem, so they just have to accept whatever rules are laid down. But that's not healthy. They're vulnerable too.
What kind of boundary would a cross-dresser need? Like, don't laugh at my outfit.
Essentially, yes. Protection of their dignity. A boundary might be, I need to know that you won't throw my things away while I'm at work. Or, I need to feel safe expressing this without being mocked or psychoanalyzed every time I do it.
So if the boundaries only go one way.
It's not a partnership. It's a policing action. And nobody wants to be the relationship police. It is exhausting and it kills intimacy. You can't be lovers with someone you're constantly policing.
Okay, so if ultimatums are the nuclear option and boundaries are the safety rails, how do you actually move the car forward? The text brings in this idea of the delicate dance of compromise.
Compromise is the engine, and the author makes a pretty bold claim here. Healthy relationships survive this not through absolute prohibition, and, this is interesting, not even through immediate absolute acceptance. They survive through compromise.
That's actually really refreshing.
Yeah.
Because we live in this culture of, total acceptance. If you love someone, you have to accept everything about them. Instantly, 100%.
But that's a very high bar. And frankly, it's unrealistic for most people. If your husband of 10 years suddenly tells you he wants to wear dresses, absolute acceptance is a lot to ask for on day one. Compromise allows for a transition. It buys time for feelings to catch up with reality.
The source lists some really practical compromises. One that stood out to me was gradual integration. It kind of sounds like exposure therapy.
In a way, it is. It's the idea of slowly increasing the partner's exposure. You don't jump straight into the deep end. Maybe at first the agreement is, you can dress, but only when I'm not home.
Okay, out of sight, out of mind.
For a while. But then maybe it evolves. Maybe the partner sees an outfit laid out on the bed, just the clothes. Then maybe they see the partner fully dressed, but just for a moment. It lets the partner acclimatize to realize, okay, he's wearing a skirt, but he's still the guy I married. The world didn't end.
Another strategy was shared involvement, turning it from a solitary act into more of a team sport.
This is a game changer for so many couples. Instead of it being this secret thing that excludes the partner, it becomes something they navigate together. Maybe they go shopping online together. Maybe the partner helps pick out an outfit that actually looks good rather than, well, sometimes a little fashion advice is needed.
Sure, steer them away from the neon fishnets.
Exactly. But psychologically, what does that do? It bridges the gap. It says, I am letting you into this world. It builds connection, not walls.
But the source talks about an expiration date on these rules.
This is so critical. We tend to set rules in a moment of crisis. The panic sets in, we make a rule, never on weeknights. And then 3 years later, we're still enforcing it, even though nobody really cares anymore.
It's not set it and forget it.
No. You have to treat these as flexible agreements. What works today might be suffocating in 6 months, or what feels safe today might feel too risky next week. You have to revisit them. If you don't renegotiate, the rule becomes a fossil, and fossils break.
So we have the framework. Boundaries good, ultimatums bad, compromise is the goal, rules need to evolve. But let's get into the weeds of how. How do you actually sit down and say, hey, let's talk about your feminine persona without it turning into a screaming match?
The source gives us a specific communication toolkit. And the first tool is one we've all heard in therapy, but it's a classic for a reason. I statements.
I have to admit, I always feel a bit robotic using I statements. I feel X when you do Y.
Yeah.
It feels scripted.
It can feel clumsy, yeah. But look at the alternative. The natural impulse is to say, you are embarrassing me, or you are being selfish.
Those are accusations. You statements are like jabs.
Exactly. The other person immediately goes on the defensive. But if you shift it to your internal experience, so instead of you're embarrassing me, you say, I feel anxious when you dress with the blinds open because I'm worried what the neighbors might think. That changes the whole problem.
That's a subtle shift, but it's huge. It's no longer you are the problem. It's my anxiety is the problem. Can you help me solve it?
Bingo. It invites collaboration. Help me feel safe. That triggers a protective instinct, not a defensive one.
The second strategy is separating feelings from behaviors. This seems really difficult to do in practice. I love you, but I hate that dress.
It is difficult, but it's essential for the crossdresser's self-worth. They need to hear that the rejection of the activity isn't a rejection of the person. A partner needs to be able to say, I find the act of cross-dressing unappealing. It doesn't do anything for me sexually, but I love you. I want us to work. Because if you conflate the two...
Then every time you say, not tonight, they hear, I find you disgusting.
Exactly. And that kind of shame is toxic. It shuts down honesty instantly.
The third tool is schedule check-ins, which goes back to that expiration date idea.
Right. Don't wait for a meltdown to talk about how things are going. If you only talk about the cross-dressing when something has gone wrong, the topic itself becomes traumatic. It becomes the fight topic.
You schedule it. Make it maintenance.
Yeah. Like changing the oil in your car instead of waiting for the engine to explode on the highway.
And the source has a pretty stark warning about what happens if you just stay silent. It says avoidance erodes trust.
Silence breeds monsters. It really does. And in that silence, these narratives build up. The crossdresser thinks, she hates this part of me. The partner thinks, he's going to leave me for this lifestyle. You have to turn the lights on.
I want to pivot to a concept the author introduces near the end, the double-edged sword. We've been talking about rules as a way to manage this, but the text admits rules can either protect intimacy or completely suffocate it.
It's all about the intent behind the rule. Are these rules designed to help you live a life together, or are they designed to control the other person?
Control is a heavy word.
But it's the reality sometimes. If a partner sets a rule just to minimize the crossdresser's existence, to make them as small as possible, that creates what the text calls hidden resentment. The person might follow the rule, but inwardly, they are checking out.
They feel stifled.
And eventually they will rebel. But there is a hopeful path here. The text shares a lesson from the field. It observes that couples who start with really strict rules often relax them over time.
That's the trajectory of trust, right?
Exactly. When the disclosure first happens, the partner's anxiety is at a 10. Their threat detection system is going nuts. They need strict boundaries just to feel like the ground is solid. Okay, you can do this, but only in the basement on Tuesdays during a full moon.
Right. Lockdown mode.
But then life goes on.
Yeah.
They see the marriage isn't destroyed. They see their partner is still the same person who takes out the trash and loves the kids. The fear subsides. And as the fear subsides, the rules can loosen. It's a natural evolution.
So the goal isn't to stay in that restricted state forever.
No. The goal is the ultimate shift the author talks about, moving from viewing cross-dressing as a threat to viewing it as a facet of identity. When you stop seeing it as this external invader attacking your relationship and start seeing it as just another quirk of the person you love, it loses its power to terrify. The text even suggests that for some couples, it can transform into a shared expression of intimacy.
Private celebrations.
Exactly. It becomes something that bonds them rather than divides them.
Which brings us right back to where we started. Pandora's box.
Yes.
The myth says all the evils of the world fly out, but you remember what was left at the bottom of the box.
Hope.
Exactly. And the article offers this really beautiful reframe of that metaphor. It says that with communication and compassion, that box doesn't have to be a container of fear. it can become a treasure chest of understanding.
I love that image because it suggests that by working through the hard stuff, the awkward negotiations, you actually unlock a level of intimacy most couples never get to. You get to know your partner's whole self, not just the edited version.
And that's really the synthesis here. Rules aren't meant to constrain love, they're meant to guide it. They are the map through the rough terrain.
When applied with empathy, yes, they are the tools that let you stay together while also being true to yourselves.